If you're looking for a podcast that packs in sound property advice, as well as offering you an insight into making the world of property effective and ultimately work for you, you're in the right place. Hosted by Arsh, the original property rebel. He's written an Amazon bestseller, created the Property Investor app, the UK's first, and is an experienced property mentor. More importantly, he talks the talk and walks the walk.
Hi and welcome to another episode of The Property Rebel with your host Arsh. And in today's session we're going to be talking about a topic which lots of people ask about. It's about what strategy do I use to source property? Now, before we do that, I'm going to say a quick hello to all listeners, all subscribers around the world. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for continuing to support me. More importantly, if you know someone else that you believe would benefit from this podcast, please feel free to share it with them. So let's get straight into it. So as you may or may not be aware, that I'm quite a prolific deal sourcer. When I say that, is that I think I'm one of the top people, or should I say one of the people that sources the most property deals in the UK. When I look for a property deal, I don't just look for one style of strategy. And the reason behind this, and I'm going to tell you a bit of a story behind it, is because I believe you could be stuck into a trap of becoming a one-trick pony. Yeah, let's rewind back to the year 2000 when I started out in my property journey, which is amazingly 21 years ago. When I first started getting into property, I automatically assumed that in order to make money from property, that you have to buy properties below market value. Now we're talking from, this was when I was looking to acquire property for my own portfolio, and that's not necessarily a bad strategy, but it will limit your approach and your ability to proceed and grow as a business. So I was only looking for properties for 25% below market value. So ideally I wanted 30% because 25% would have been net and then 5% would have been my costings. But as you can appreciate, not every vendor wants to accept a 25% discount on their property, which means that you then have to be really targeted with your marketing, trying to find those that are going through repossession, those that are going through financial hardship, those that are going through marital breakdowns, those that are literally in a spot of bother. Now, how do you do that? It's continuous marketing, which means that back then there wasn't the benefits of Facebook and Google adverts and all the other things that you can do today and the beauty of the internet. Back then it was very much a case of letters, leaflets, newspaper advertising and media advertising, which was very costly. But out of every advert that I put out, out of every 10 phone calls, you would say that out of those, really only 2 of those probably would be interested leads. And then out of that, you'd then go and view the 2. And off the back of that, I would then potentially try and convert 1 depending on the style of deal. Now, back then I had a massive marketing budget. When I say massive marketing budget, I was in pretty much every publication in the Midlands. So that was every newspaper, every magazine. We were doing letters, we were doing leaflets. It was a very costly exercise, but the way that I justified it, we only needed 1 or 2 deals to make that happen. And we bought a lot. I won't say that we didn't, we bought a hell of a lot. Moving forward, thinking back on my time now, how much more would I have done if I knew then what I know now? Because back then I wouldn't have considered all the other strategies. So just so that you know, when I look at a deal now, I look to monetize every style of deal, every type of lead. So that is things like looking at below market value opportunities, looking at lease option opportunities, looking at rent to rent, looking at commercial to residential, looking at something where I can get an option on it and potentially increase the value by, let's say, generating planning permission or going off and getting a planning gain. We're looking at exchange and delay completion. We're looking at an assisted sale. These are some of the strategies. These are only a handful of the strategies that bring to mind straight away. So if someone is looking to sell their property and we can buy it below market value, then why wouldn't we? However, like I said, not everyone wants to sell their property at such a discount, so we have to start thinking of other ways that we can monetize it. So is there potential where we can add value by buying a property at full market value. And I believe I've already done a podcast on this. If we can add value by turning that property from a single let into a multi-let, and then instead of having to worry about buying it from a discount, we actually benefit from the capital growth of it now becoming a HMO, potential commercial product which you can refinance commercially, and also the benefit of the cash flow. If you can't buy, if you don't want to buy it, or they're in negative equity for whatever reason, you can potentially structure it as a rent to rent or a lease option. There are many ways to skin the cat. But I've known lots of people that will only say we're only looking for properties 25 to 30% below market value. And I would say that is pretty much working on tunnel vision, and they're forgetting about all the other opportunities. Have you ever heard of the saying, don't become jack of all trades, master of none? And to some degree, I agree with that, because when I'm looking at a property, when people say, well, what strategy do you focus on? I don't actually focus on a strategy. I have a look at what will be best suited for that property, and more importantly, for that vendor, because we all know about creating win-wins. And so in that scenario, it's got to be a win for the vendor, it's got to be a win for us, and everyone's got to benefit. Now, there's no point me going to offer someone 25% below market value if they've got pretty much a 90 or 95% mortgage on their property, because let's face it, if they was to sell us that property at that level of discount, they're then going to have to subsidize the sale. And my question to you would be, is it ethical? Borderline. Are you ambulance chasing? Borderline. But more importantly, if you're in that position yourself, would you want to try, the fact that they're selling you this property means that they may be in some kind of trouble. Are you then trying to put them in deeper trouble by trying to get them to subsidize the sale as well? So you've got to think about this when you're structuring deals. And that's why I've said, although I appreciate the actual concept of jack of all trades, master of none, you do have to become the master of all trades. And the reason why I say that is because you need to understand all the strategies, so that every time you go to a property, you can say, hi, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Okay, before we start talking about your circumstances, let's look at the property, then let's look at your circumstances. And the reason being is that you then understand what's going on with the property, but more importantly, you understand what's going on with the people behind the property. And that is key. So looking at the strategy, so when you speak to them and they tell you how much is outstanding on their mortgage, they tell you the reason for the sale, they tell you why they're looking to dispose. And believe it or not, I say this all the time, that money is not always the motivator when they come in to sell property. Over the 21 years, I've been in thousands of properties, I've negotiated thousands of deals, and you'll be surprised that it's not always deals where people are getting repossessed that are the biggest issues. Believe it or not, it's marital breakups. So just imagine now, I hope that no one's going through any hardship whilst you're listening to this podcast. And if you are, believe it or not, there will always be light at the end of the tunnel. I'm a big believer that tough times don't last, strong people do. So if you are going through a tough time, I appreciate that we've slightly sidetracked, but if you want to reach out to me, you're more than welcome to. Send me a quick email, admin@arshilahi.com. Always happy to have a chat, always happy for you to come and get on the phone and bend my ear, regardless what it may be. Bit of a Samaritan like that, should I say. But over the years, I've been in thousands of properties where someone's going through a breakup or a divorce, and the only thing that is keeping these two people together is this asset which they're struggling to sell. And you may be in this situation, and then they become a motivated seller. They try putting it on the market, it hasn't sold. The wife wants to go this way because she's probably found a new partner, or the husband's probably found a new partner, whatever it may be. And the only thing that's holding them together is this one asset, and this is the one thing that keeps them, keeps them connected, and they don't want to be connected. So when you look at that scenario, is money the main motivator? No, it's not. The motivation in that scenario is that they want a clean break. So you then can start looking at the options of how much is outstanding on the mortgage, how long is left on the mortgage, how much are the mortgage payments. In that scenario, I don't believe like a lease option or rent to rent would be the best solution for them, just purely because with a lease option and a rent to rent, they still own the property, which means that they've still got that level of connection. So you should be looking to acquire that property somehow. So you've got to look, that was just an example. I can give you hundreds of different examples. We're doing a land deal at the moment where there's an elderly lady living in the property, and we've put an option on the piece of land for 2 years, where we're then going to go off and get planning permission for approximately 30 two-bedroom apartments. That's a deal that I've got live. That's one of my deals at the moment. And then the aim is that once we've got planning permission, we'll buy the property off the lady. Then she goes off and does whatever she wants to do. She's quite an elderly lady, so I can only assume that she's going to go into some kind of level of care or supported help, which will help pay for that. Other deals that I've done recently, there's a property in London where there's a guy that's 75 years old. He wants to remain in his property. He wants to live in his property rent-free for the rest of his life. So his scenario is that he wants to sell the property because he's got a lot of equity in it. But he then, once he's sold it, he wants to live in the property for the rest of his life rent-free. Now, it doesn't sound that attractive when I say it like that, but when we look at the level of discount that we've negotiated to accommodate that, the fact that he may live another 10 or 15 years and we're not going to receive any rental income, and we may still have some outgoings, we've structured a really good deal. If I didn't know about how to structure these deals or think about each deal individually and come up with a suitable solution, and I was only that one-trick pony that wanted that 25% below market value, how many of these deals would I have passed up? So going back to my story in the year 2000, between 2000 and almost like 2008, how many deals, how many properties did I visit where instantly, let's just say the market value was £100,000 and I was then trying to negotiate at circa between 70 to 75,000, and if they didn't fit with my parameter, I'd say, sorry guys, okay, can't help you, boom, close the door and off we went. Because we were literally very focused on discount and we were very focused on monetary value, and that is the wrong attitude. You know, going from where I am now, I can imagine I would have pretty much 10 times, I don't like saying 10 times, but I would have done 10 times the more amount of business if I knew then what I know now. So don't fall into that mistake. Don't fall into that trap, especially if you're starting out now. Understand all the strategies. And more importantly, the reason why I tell you to understand all the strategies is because you might find that one of those strategies suit you better than others. We've all got different personality types. We've all got different goals and aspirations. Now, what I'm trying to say to you is that not everyone wants to become a HMO landlord. Not everyone wants to become a buy-to-let landlord because they don't like dealing with tenants. They don't like, having to deal with maintenance and letting agents and all the kerfuffle that goes with it. So you might find that developments is your thing. You might find that acquiring property strategically, like a lease option, etc., is your thing, and you don't actually want to own, but you want to control. But you won't know whether you like these until you've actually experimented with all the strategies, which means that, the old saying of jack of all trades and master of none is kind of non-existent, because you need to understand all the trades to be able to understand which one you want to master. That's pretty much about it. When you're looking, and especially if you're deal sourcing, I get approached by deal sourcers every day. One guy called me yesterday and he goes, Arsh, I've got this deal. And he goes that, let's use simple numbers. He goes, £100,000 and the vendor's looking to accept 97, which is a £3,000 discount, which when you work at it on a percentage basis, 3%. Now, if I'm going to be completely honest, I can get more of a discount by going to sleep. He hasn't done very much work to negotiate a 3% discount. And I said to him, what's the reason for them wanting to sell? And his response to that was, Arsh, why does that matter? They would just want to sell their property. And I don't think he understood the gist of my question. The reason why I want to know why they're selling is to understand how we can structure a deal. But there's potential other options there. And I asked him, okay, what's the house? He goes, it's just 2-bed single let. Okay, so with a 2-bed single let, you can't really turn it into a multi-let. Depending on the location, you might be able to run it as some kind of supported. And so you might be narrow. You might actually be very narrow in what you can do with that property. It's very rare that I say that. But there are some properties, like for argument's sake, if it's a 2-bed bungalow, there's going to be very limited opportunities that you can do with that. So you've got to understand what the property is, you've got to understand what the circumstances are behind the sale and structure a deal accordingly. You know, if it's a bungalow in the middle of nowhere and your only real option is to potentially acquire it to either sell on or package it up, you've got to make sure that that deal is attractive. Because if you try and acquire it, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to then try and dispose it? And that means that you're going to have to sell it on through an agent, or then do you become a motivated seller? So lots of things to take into consideration. If there are apartments, again, you can start looking down the service accommodation route. You can start to look at potentially, giving you an example, I've got a holiday let down in Cornwall that works really well on holidays, on holiday lets, but also I use that as a second family home. So there's lots of reasons to understand the strategies, because not only will it benefit you, but it'll also benefit your investors on your database. And which takes me back to my final point, is that if you're sourcing, don't ever fall into the trap of, I wouldn't buy this deal, so why wouldn't my investors? The reason why I say that is because I've got a certain level of lending, or when I say lending, purchasing parameters. So I'm at the moment only looking for things like blocks of flats. I don't want a single flat in a block, I want the whole block. I've kind of stopped investing in HMOs myself, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I won't look at other HMOs for other investors. I've got over 100,000 people on my investor database, so that every time I look at a deal, I don't just assume, it's no good, it's not for me. I'm now saying, okay, it may not suit my requirements, but I certainly know that it will meet other people's parameters. Going back to my initial point, that if I can't get a 25% discount, but I can potentially get a 15% discount, okay, it may not suit my requirement, but I know someone else will be happy with a 15% discount. And then we start to look at the cash flow figures. You know, I've got lots of doctors and dentists and medical professionals that are on my investor database. I know that they're very happy with probably smaller discounts than what I would be looking for, but they're very much happy for a product that's already tenanted, already managing, bringing in some income, and it is very low risk and very low hassle. So in that respect, single lets, yes, they will buy. Multi-lets, perhaps not, depending on the cash flow, depending on the capital import, etc. So don't discount any lead. There's no need for you to discount any lead. Just because it may not suit you, it will suit someone else, which then also, I should mention that if you haven't got an investor database, fire it over to us at the Property Investor app. You can send it over to deals@propertyinvestorapp.co.uk. My team will appraise it and then literally come back to you with some feedback and say, yes, we think this is a deal, or no, it's not, or have you considered this angle? So if that's something of interest, more than happy to have a chat. So there we have it, guys. Hopefully that's a full-on episode. So don't fall into the traps. Here's some of the takeaways. Don't fall into some of the traps. Understand every strategy. More importantly, understand the circumstances behind the vendor and the property in order to come up with real win-win solutions. And final tip, don't assume that just because it won't work for you, that it won't work for someone else. Monetize that lead, source that lead onto someone else. So I'm just going to tell you very briefly that at the start of February, I'm starting a program and we're going to kick off with a challenge. It's called the 30 Deals in 30 Days Challenge, and the program's called the Elite Property Tribe. It's a program which I teach property investors how to become professional deal sourcers, so that all the things that we've talked about in this episode, you get to understand and learn, so that every time you look at a deal, you'll be able to monetize it and make some money from that deal. If you're interested in that, I've done a couple of videos and I've uploaded them onto my YouTube channel, which is Arsh. Feel free to watch that, or if you want to reach out and you want to know a little bit more about it, please feel free to email admin@arshilahi.com. I'm more than happy to send you some details on that. As always, you can connect with me on social media, so you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and the new phenomenon, which is Clubhouse. Whether you like it or you dislike it, I'm not a big fan of it, if I'm honest. But connect with me on all social media platforms. If you like other free educational tips, why don't you go over to my YouTube channel, which is Arsh. On there I've got over a couple hundred videos, which has all different types. One week, last week we talked about electricity meters, and I've done a full video on it, a walk around in one of my properties, how that's been practically put in there. Finally, if you haven't already done so, and you're looking for deals yourself, or you're looking for examples of deals, why don't you download the Property Investor app? It's the UK's first property investment platform, which showcases all kinds of deals all over the country. So whether you're looking for a BMV deal, lease option deal, rent to rent deal, service accommodation deal, commercial deal, whatever it may be, we've got them all there. You can go to our website, which is propertyinvestorapp.co.uk, or you can download the app from your app store on your mobile phone by searching Property Investor, and all the deals will be there in the palm of your hand in approximately 2 minutes. So guys, on that note, as always, I wish you all to be safe, well and happy in these testing times. Keep yourself safe and your family safe, and I look forward to speaking to you all very soon. Thank you and bye-bye.
The large majority of people make a positive change if they take immediate action. So act now. Download the Property Investor app and join Arsh on his social media channels to excel your property journey.